morning guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be doing another sewing project. The project for today is some flared trousers by Vogue. So I'm using this pattern here, I'll link in the description box. And I've got this sort of dusty pink fabric. It's a tencel twill, which tencel is a fibre, if I'm pronouncing it right, is a fibre that's really good and like sustainability wise. So I'm really interested to use this. First impressions, feels amazing. So this is the fabric I'm going to use. I'll link that in the description as well. And so the first clip I'm going to sort of rewind to is yesterday when I cut out the fabric. So I took the measurements for my waist, my hips, my crotch to waist to find the waist height, and then crotch to ankle, so inside leg, and waist to ankle, outside leg. So then I looked at the pattern, decided on a size 12 from the waist and hip measurements, which is about standard for me on dress patterns. And then I looked at the leg length and elongated this a little bit because I'm 5'8", so a little bit taller than average. So I cut out the fabric and I'm going to eat my breakfast and then we're going to get sewing. The first steps of these trousers is to do the front fly section, so I'll show you what I'm going to do. First things first, I need to ease this back section, which is from this square to the edge of the fabric. And then we move on to the fly. So what I've got to do is I've got to properly stitch from the notch to the square and then ease stitch, so a long machine stitch up from there. So I'm going to stitch from here to here and then I'm going to ease stitch up to the top. That has been properly stitched and reversed at each end, and then this part has been ease stitched in. Next thing I'm going to do is iron this flat, and then this top one gets folded back to in line with there, and that one's ironing down, and then we look at adding the zip. That has been pressed like that. I've folded the trousers back in half, and we are going to attach the zipper to the tab that we folded over here. So this is where I'm going to stitch down next. So next we are doing step D and attaching the other side of the zipper. I have flipped the trousers over so the zip is upside down, and I am going to stitch along this side where it naturally falls on the other tab of the front. Next step is E, where we're going to baste the right hand side down in place. So I'm going to stitch along this side with a long machine stitch. If it's basting, it should be taken out, so I'm not going to worry about how visible it is or how perfect it is. By the looks of it, this basting was just to hold the fabric in place, and now I need to do the neat stitch that goes down and creates the fly. So then when we take this stitching out, it will flap open and we'll be able to access the zip. So this is the finished fly, which I'm very happy with, especially considering how visible my stitching is. I've put the front sections to one side. Stop wrestling. I've put the front sections to one side for a minute, and now I'm going to do the darts on the back. I'm just going to mark them up with some thread. So I do this by hand. I basically go through and then through again, and then what you can do is when you pull it all apart, you just give it a snip and you've got a little mark on both pieces of fabric. So start from the back, go through once, pull it through but leave a tail, go through again, back to the back, and then go back to the front again. And as long as you snip it, allowing some thread, when you pull them apart, snip it in the middle, you've got a mark on both sides. So I'm going to do that and then stitch the darts in place. Remember, when you're stitching darts, don't double stitch or reverse stitch at the end. leave some thread and then tie a little knot, and it will stop you from getting a little bulge or pucker at the end. The other thing I was going to say about this pattern, which was really great, was it had variations for sort of if you're larger on your hips and bum compared to your waist, then you could cut a curvy pattern piece. If you're smaller on your hips and bum compared to your waist, you could cut a slim pattern piece. I went standard straight down the middle because generally I've not found that I've had issues with the patterns when I've been cutting them and fitting them. On the previous trousers that I've made, they've fit absolutely fine. So I went straight down the middle with standard, although I would say I'm normally on the edge of probably slightly curvier compared to my waist measurement. But I thought that was really great. They didn't have any length variations, but again, they had a line where you could cut and elongate for your length. I am absolutely bombing through this make. So I've got the darts done and the ease stitching done, same as we did on the front, I've done on the back. And the next step is to sew the inside legs, so sew the back sections to the front sections. So I'm going to pin that, get that done, and then hopefully we'll be close to fitting it soon. So the next part to do is to stitch the crotch seam. However, the inside leg probably won't change seam allowance wise because any adjustment will be on the outside. So I'm going to overlock those seams first, as otherwise they'll get stitched down in the crotch seam and it will be a lot harder to do. So I'm going to quickly overlock the inside leg and then stitch around the crotch. The last step before fitting the trousers is to sew the fronts and backs together at the side seams. This is what we're looking at so far. I've just tried them on. We're looking good, but we're currently too snug on the top part. So I'm going to have to let some seams out. We've got too much fabric here on the waist, which can be easily amended. It's just a matter of tucking the right top centimetre in. But down the hips and around the bum, I think we want to take out the seam allowance a little bit and get a better fit, because standing up it's okay, but if I were to sit down, we're too tight. So that's going to get done, but otherwise they're looking great. I love the fabric, love the colour, and I think we'll get it looking really nice. The disaster has been averted. These now fit loads better down this section here. They need taking in at the waist, and then I'm going to look at the fit on the leg. I'm going to look at whether I want to do slightly more of an emphasised flare and take it in a little bit down the thigh and then let it flare out after the knee point. I'm going to turn them up inside out, put them back on again, and then start pinning and see what we think. So these are now pinned and ready to go. I've pinned in a little bit of the side seams and actually left the back seam, which is not where I'd normally take it in, because that's sitting quite nicely currently. So I've taken in the side seams and just tapered a little bit down the leg, just to here, which is where the knee sits, and we'll see how that looks once it's stitched. But I don't want it too tight because this fabric hasn't got a lot of stretch in it, which was the previous problem when it was a bit too tight. But I think by tapering them in a little bit, it will just give a little bit more of a pronounced shape. What the fit is now looking like. It's fitting much better. If you are wanting more of an emphasised flare, you would definitely need a fabric with a lot more stretch in it. this is as much as I can take it in and still be able to sit down. And yet, it's beautiful fabric, but it has emphasised the amount of stretch that you need if you're making trousers. If you were making these and wanting them this fit or a little bit wider, then it's absolutely fine. But if you want anything a lot more sort of like tight fitting on the top, then you'd need more stretch. But this is now fitting really beautifully. And we're going to go and overlock these side seams. Everything I can possibly overlock has been overlocked now on my trousers, so we're going to start on the waistband. And the first thing to do is create the belt loops, which this pattern calls carriers. I had no idea what carriers were when I was cutting out the pattern, but it's for belt loops. So I have a long piece of fabric that I'm going to stitch along, maybe turn the right way out, but I always struggle doing that, so I might just fold it and stitch down the middle. And then this gets chopped into 5 belt loops, and these then get placed around the waistband and stitched in place so that you know they're in the right places and nice and evenly spaced. I have done the belt loops and cut them out and stitched them in place, so I have 2 nice and symmetrical at the front, I have 2 on the side seams and 1 at the centre back. So the next part is to do the waistband. I need to cut out the interfacing because I've not done that yet, and iron that onto the pieces it needs to be on, and then I'll look at what I need to construct and where. Okay, so I don't know why the waistband seems to be so confusing, but it is. So we've got 2 waistband pieces. We've got piece number 6 and piece number 7, and we've got 4 pieces of each. So piece number 6 is the front section of the waistband, and piece number 7 is the back section of the waistband. Piece number 7 stays exactly the same, but piece number 6, one side of it needs trimming down because it's where you've got the fly, so you've got one side which is longer than the other. So the right hand side needs trimming down, which I have done, and it shows you on the pattern where it needs doing. The next point is to put the 2 back pieces together at the back seam. So I'm going to stitch pieces number 7 on the uninterfaced pieces together and stitch down there. Let's see if we can explain a little bit better. So these 2 pieces are pattern piece number 7, and I have stitched them together at the back. So they are the back waistband pieces. Then we have the shorter number 6 piece over here that has been trimmed down, and the longer number 6 piece on this side. So I need to stitch both these seams, and then I'm assuming that I do exactly the same but with the other 4 pieces which have been interfaced to strengthen them. So before I deal with the interfaced pieces, we're going to attach these ones to the waistband. So I'm going to pin it round. If it doesn't fit properly, we've got some easing stitching that we can adjust on the sides, and equally, because I've taken in the waist slightly, if I need to take in any of the seams, this is when I'll do that to make sure it fits nicely. But we're going to pin it and sew it all the way around, and then chop off the top of the zipper tape so it sits nicely. Okay, so I have attached that part of the waistband. If I'm being honest, I must have got confused between my left and rights, which isn't unusual for me. So I did recut the side that I'd cut shorter and just left them both long, so then I can trim them after we've stitched everything, and I'll have to do the same with the interfacing because it didn't reach. But the rest of it's gone on really nicely, and so I'm going to do exactly the same, joining the pieces together with the interfaced part and then attach that to the trousers. Now I am just ironing up the inside hem so that it can get neatly stitched on the inside of the trouser. So I have now finished the waistband off. It was just a matter of attaching the inside part of it and then hand stitching round on the bottom edge, which I have done. I'm now going to take them around to mum and dad's to go and do the buttonhole because my sewing machine's buttonholer has broke. So I'm going to do that at mum and dad's, and I'll show you the finished trouser in a day or so when I have done the hem and the button. Hey guys, it's a few days later now and I wanted to show you the final fit of the trousers. So these are the trousers, finally finished. It took me a while to get the hem at the right length, but I've decided to hem it to go with a pair of heels. So a little bit longer than it would be for flats, but that's how I decided I'd wear them most. So, and I hand stitched that as well so that it didn't leave any like seam marks and it flowed a little bit nicer. But I love these trousers, I love the fabric. I have to say they're super soft. The drape's beautiful, the fit's really lovely, the colour really suits my skin tone. I know they might not be everybody's cup of tea, but personally I think they're super flattering on me. The one thing that I will iterate, which I mentioned earlier in the video, was that the fabric could do with a little bit of stretching. So if you're wanting more of an emphasised flare, don't use this fabric because you won't be able to sit down. For this sort of fit where it's sort of slim to the leg and then goes out, there's enough room and enough movement for me to be able to sit down and do everything I want to. But I just wanted to mention that because buying fabric online is difficult and I want to be honest about anything that I do buy and whether it's the right fabric for the job. So these are the final trousers. I really hope you like them. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. So bye.